In the last session, we have studied the concept and why aspect of mixed method research. But certainly you must be thinking how to design it, how to conduct mixed method research. And that's why let's see about it today. In the beginning, I would like to give one case or one example from education about mixed method research. A researcher wanted to study effect of specially prepared learning material on the vocabulary of hearing impaired students. Now the study was conducted in a special school for hearing impaired. There were only 8 students in that class. So naturally there was very small and purposive sample which is used in qualitative study. But she used both the aspects. What were the quantitative aspects of the study? She wanted to study whether the vocabulary really increased after implementing that specially prepared learning material. So she naturally wanted to measure what was the vocabulary in the beginning and what was the increase, how much was the increase afterwards. Was the increase statistically significant? That was another question. Because suppose some student used 45 words in the beginning and then after the specially prepared material was implemented, he started using 57 words. Whether this increase is statistically significant or not, whether it is sufficient enough to take cognizance of it. So this was quantitative aspect. Naturally, for this, the researcher used scores on a standardized test. Ali Awar Jung Institute has prepared a standardized test for measuring vocabulary of hearing impaired students. So such standardized test was used. Then the experiment was done throughout the year. So there were number of worksheets given to the students. After every activity or after learning every set of learning material, some worksheets were given and the students worked on it. So whatever words the students used in that worksheet, they were also counted. Besides that, the researcher sat and observed the class throughout the year. And she literally counted the words used by those hearing impaired students in the class while responding or while interacting with each other or while asking something to the teacher or responding to the teacher. So all this was numerical data and that was used. At the same time, there was qualitative aspect of the study also. Why certain students benefited most? I told you that there were only 8 students, but still some students benefited most. There was tremendous increase in their vocabulary and there were some 2 or 3 students who did not show that much increase. So the researcher was not merely interested whether there was increase or not. She also wanted to make sure what were the reasons behind this. Why certain students benefited most and why certain students didn't benefit that much, even if the same learning material was administered throughout the year. So again, she also wanted to know, does the increase in vocabulary depend on hearing loss or home background of the students or personality characteristics of the students? Now, all these questions, she didn't get answers to these questions just by administering that standardized test. So, she had to use case study. She did case study of every child. What was their history? Why there was hearing loss? What was the home background? How many persons were there in the home? She interviewed the persons in the home, the parents and grandparents, etc. So whether they were really talking to these students. So where there were inputs, vocabulary inputs from the home or not. Whether the parents were encouraging this child to learn or not. Or they were very frustrated about this child, because sometimes you know that hearing impaired students or handicapped students, they are not accepted by the family. So they may just neglect. So what was their attitude, and whether that attitude reflected in motivation or not. Then detailed observation of the student. So there was video recording done, and every child was video recorded how he was giving responses. There were different sets of learning material. One set was on festival. So some students were more interested in festival. There was some another material on farm. So 2-3 students were more interested in farm and learning material regarding farm. So why there was increase in certain sets, or why certain students were more interested in some sets and they were not interested in another set. So all this was studied, and on the basis of both, the conclusions were drawn. So now that we have studied one case, it was just a small example, but now let's see about how to go about designing mixed method research. So I have given 2-3 examples that a researcher, even if she is conducting a survey on attitude, she can administer the attitude scale. So she will get numerical data followed by in-depth interviews and observations of selected participants. So the researcher won't be satisfied about getting just what are the scores on attitude scale. She also wants to go in-depth information about why such attitude was there, or what is the behavior of the person. So in-depth interview and observation will give qualitative data, and then conclusion about attitude, and not just attitude, the reasons behind them. So this is a small example of mixed method research. It can also be used in experimental study. In the beginning, the researcher may collect qualitative data, observation, interviews to finalize the treatment. For example, suppose an experimenter wants to develop a program for developing emotional intelligence of a student. So what type of activity should be involved? What type of inputs should be given? For finalizing that, the person will collect qualitative data. What are aspects of emotional intelligence? What type of lacuna are there in emotional intelligence, etc., etc. So she will collect qualitative data. She will observe certain persons who are emotionally intelligent and who are less emotionally intelligent, etc. She will also interview different persons, what they want in this program, etc. So this qualitative aspect she will cover first, and then she will finalize the treatment, and then administer the treatment and study effect. And the second part is quantitative, and that's why she will test hypothesis also. Now, we must say that a strong mixed method study should start with mixed method research questions to shape the method and overall design of a study. For example, if the study begins with quantitative phase, the investigator might introduce hypothesis, because hypothesis and their testing is special feature of quantitative study. But later in the study, when the qualitative phase is addressed, the qualitative research questions appear. So suppose the experimenter deals with particular treatment and wants to study the effect of that treatment. That will be quantitative part of the study. But also afterwards the researcher thinks that why that particular treatment was very useful to these students. That is qualitative part, and that will be dealt with qualitative research questions. So overall we can say that mixed method research report should include objectives, should include both purposes. So if you really want to do mixed method research, right from the objectives, you should consider both these. So you should indicate that there are both purposes in your study. Then both the type of questions. So there will be hypothesis, there will be research questions, which is special feature of qualitative study. Then of course, as we have seen in the last session, both the type of data will be there. There will be numerical data, there will be textual data in the form of words, responses, images, etc., etc. Then because both the type of data is used or both the type of information is used, it should include quantitative as well as qualitative analysis. And the interpretation will be in the light of both the type of analysis, quantitative as well as qualitative. And lastly, the conclusions will be based on both the findings, not merely on quantitative data or not merely on subjective interpretation. Even though there are many advantages of mixed method research, there are certain limitations, and that we should keep in our mind when we are trying to do mixed method research. That it requires expertise in both methods. So if the researcher really has understood the philosophical background, the assumptions of both the type of studies, then only he should try such mixed method research. Then it requires extensive data collection and resources because it uses numerical as well as qualitative data. Sometimes it happens that it is popular to claim the use of mixed method design, even though only one method is used very superficially. So for example, if you conduct quantitative research and if you take just one or two interviews and the researcher claims that I have used both, that is not the case. So both the methods should be used rigorously, then only we can say that it is mixed method research. So I hope you have understood both this concept and how to design and use this method. Thank you so much.